Today, we're breaking down an absolutely stunning, hypothetical scenario that explores how a major world power could be brought to its knees in just about 48 hours. We're going to look at the strike, the incredible fallout, and the frankly chilling technology that could make it all happen.
It all kicks off with this image, an image that would send shockwaves around the entire planet. Missiles, falling on a city that, up until this very moment, was seen as its untouchable sanctuary. This wasn't just some random attack. No, this was a statement. And it left the whole world wondering, what just happened?
So, yeah, how does a place like that, a global safe haven, become a war zone overnight? How do you go from business as usual to missiles hitting luxury hotels? Well, to get the answer, we have to go back just 48 hours. That's all it took. The fuse for this absolute powder keg was lit by a single, incredibly audacious military operation that changed, well, everything. It was called Operation Epic Fury, and let me tell you, this was not some minor skirmish. This was a massive joint U.S.-Israeli operation aimed right at the head of the Iranian regime, and it all started with one single assassination. So check out this timeline. On February 27th, according to the source material, Iran had actually agreed to diplomatic terms. It seemed like a breakthrough was on the horizon. But then, less than 24 hours later, diplomacy gets thrown right out the window. Operation Epic Fury kicks off, and Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, is killed. So right away, you've got two completely different stories. The official line, it was an anticipatory strike, to stop an attack that was about to happen. But the analysis we're digging into here suggests something else entirely. A pre-planned attack that went ahead after Iran had already agreed to terms. It really makes you wonder if diplomacy was ever the real goal? Killing the supreme leader, that was just the beginning. What happened next was a full-blown military inferno, an assault on Iran designed with one thing in mind, to completely overwhelm and shatter the country. And the attack was unbelievably widespread. We're talking about strikes in 24 out of Iran's 31 provinces. They hit everything: military bases, nuclear sites, even government buildings. This was truly a nationwide assault. And the firepower, it's just staggering. The source says over 1,200 munitions were fired from about 200 fighter jets in just the first few waves. The goal here wasn't just to strike. It was to systematically wipe Iran's military and nuclear capabilities right off the map. And make no mistake, this was a true decapitation strike. It wasn't just the supreme leader. You've got the defense minister, the head of the IRGC, the secretary of the defense council, the chief of staff, the entire chain of command, just gone in a matter of hours. So you're Iran, your leadership is gone, your country's on fire. What do? Well, you lash out. But as this analysis points out, that retaliation was a huge strategic mistake that ended up causing way more political damage than anything else. And what the analysis basically calls an act of pure desperation, Iran hit back. Hundreds of missiles and drones were launched, and they didn't just target U.S. bases. No, they went after neighboring countries like the UAE and Qatar. The message was pretty clear. If we're not safe, nobody is. But here's the thing. It didn't really work out the way Iran probably hoped. The images were shocking, for sure, but the actual physical damage and casualties were surprisingly minimal. The political damage, though? Oh, that was catastrophic. By attacking its neighbors, Iran basically burned every bridge it had, leaving itself completely and utterly isolated. So why did the regime fall apart so fast? To really get that, you have to zoom out a bit. See, this attack didn't happen in a vacuum. The analysis argues that the Iranian regime was already a house of cards, just waiting for a strong wind to knock it over. The regime was already dealing with this perfect storm of crises. The economy was in an absolute freefall. There were severe food and water shortages. And maybe most important of all, the trust between the people and the government was completely shattered, especially after the regime admitted to killing 3,000 protesters just months before. The foundations were crumbling long before the first missile ever fell. Okay, now we have to talk about the technology that made this kind of precise, massive strike even possible. The source points to the use of autonomous weapons, AI-powered systems, sometimes called killer robots. And these aren't just fancy drones. We're talking about systems that can hunt, identify, and take out targets all on their own with no human pulling the trigger. And this is where the story takes a really unsettling turn.
The source says the AI targeting systems had these bizarre, almost random-sounding code names: Lavender, the Gospel, and, get this, Where is Daddy? It sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie, but this is the new face of war, where algorithms with creepy names can generate kill lists with tens of thousands of names on them. So, as the whole region is spiraling into chaos, the source highlights one country's response as a masterclass in just pure, calculated pragmatism: Pakistan.
Pakistan's strategy was actually pretty simple, but it was really effective. They officially condemned the US-Israeli attack on Iran. And then they turned right around and also officially condemned Iran's retaliatory strikes. By condemning both sides, they just stepped out of the way and avoided getting dragged into the whole mess. And this whole policy, it was guided by a core idea laid out in the source material, that a successful foreign policy isn't about shouting from the rooftops, it's about avoiding conflict, and most importantly, protecting your own people. It's really the definition of pragmatism in a world that's gone completely chaotic.
So, with its leadership shattered, its military in ruins, and its neighbors now its enemies, what's next for Iran? Well, the analysis lays out a few possible and dramatically different paths forward.
The analysis suggests three potential futures. First, there's the Iron Fist. A military hardliner tries to take over, which would almost certainly kick off a brutal civil war. Second, you've got the power vacuum, a total free-for-all where different factions fight for control, which could lead to a complete collapse of the state, kind of like what we saw in Libya. And then finally, there's a little glimmer of hope in a third path, the diplomatic turn, where a new, moderate leadership comes in, focused not on fighting, but on the huge task of rebuilding from the inside. And that brings us to the end. This whole scenario leaves us with a really deep and pretty uncomfortable question to think about. In a world of unchecked power and overwhelming force, what really is the price of survival?